Welcome back to SleeplessRonin Plays. Today we're going to do a new kind of video that I've been working on for quite a while, and so let's kind of like take a look. We'll do a bit of like a presentation at the beginning of it, and then we're going to walk through what I'm doing. Now, before I actually get running on anything, I would like to apologize for the fact that I haven't posted anything in a while. Everything's been really busy. I've just been run ragged, so I haven't had time to actually get around to working on like the actual filming and editing. So this is taking me longer to produce than I wanted to. I am just one person doing all of this. So, yeah, but for this video, it's an idea I had a little while ago, and I kind of just wanted to like look through all the variants of a mech and see how it changed combat worthiness over the eras. So we're going to be looking at the Marauder, because it's a venerable classic mech. I mean, it's iconic, it's easily recognizable, and everybody knows what the Marauder is and kind of what the Marauder's basic layout is. You know, 2 PPCs, 2 medium lasers, and an AC-5. This is what we're looking at working with. So, now, I will probably not be on screen the entire time, so you can read the entire videos, but I will be presenting them, so we'll go through it. But let's just kind of get on the slideshow. Okay, so I've gone through and I've created a whole bunch of radar charts. You know what radar charts are? They're like the ones that have like little like images on that goes out and like it hits like a bunch of values around a thing. So I made each chart to have 6 values. Starting from the top and going around anti-clockwise. Why did I pick anti-clockwise? It's clockwise. I'm an idiot. Just ignore what I wrote there. Good job, Sleepless. That was dumb of you. Oh well, anyways. Max heat efficient damage value. Damage short range. So just kind of read these. Max heat efficient damage medium. What I'm going to talk about is I'm going to explain all these in the next slide. So, next heat efficient damage long range. Max expected damage output value. Alpha strike overheat ceiling. And armor percentage. Now, yes, I know there are other combat values, but mostly, for the most Marauders, they move 4-6. Some of them move 4-6-4. There are a few 3-5-5s. So, for the most part, though, the Marauder's got a very... its movement value hangs around there. There are a few things I really couldn't like encapsulate in my chart. Things like C3 Slave and Case and a few things like that really don't automatically come in. The fragility of an XL engine over a light engine or a standard engine, I could have done another thing for that, but I just didn't see a good way of representing that with a number. So I'm essentially doing mostly damage output, how hot you get, and your overall armor protection. So that's going to be working with for the majority of how we're going to analyze the Marauder. So, what do the weapon values mean? Max heat efficient damage short, and these are all going to kind of carry over. This is the most damage possible at 9 hexes or less, SRM maximum range, without overheating while not moving. So essentially a stationary shot, how much damage can you output at 9 hexes or less and not generate 1 point of excess heat? So that's the important thing. Not even 1 point of excess heat. This is like how much you can do every turn possible without ever getting a buildup of heat that will eventually slow you down or make it harder to hit. So just kind of like a value. This is like the efficient damage you can do every time without worry. The next one of these is the same thing, but now at medium range, which I consider to be 10 to 15 hexes. An MRM large laser rack 5 range area. So that's what we're looking at for the medium range. The long range is anything at 16 plus hexes, doing the same idea. Now, the last damage value is max expected damage output. That is the most damage possible if every weapon hits during an alpha strike. So the target is close by, you can put every gun into it, just shoot every single gun, and they all hit. How much damage would a mech do? Important to note though, if it has a cluster weapon, and some Marauders do have cluster weapons, the estimated value will be treated as if you rolled a 7 on the cluster chart. Essentially, so if we're talking like if the Marauder has a Silver Bullet Gauss, which we'll find those, it would count as if it rolled a 7 on the cluster chart, which is 9 BBs. So it'll take 9 points into the value of max expected damage output. But now, let's look at the weirdest thing I had to create for my chart. Since essentially with these charts, you want everything to be bigger, to be better. The higher on the scale, the better it is. Well, overheating, the more points of heat you generate, the worse the mech is doing. So I had to invert that. So the Alpha Strike overheat ceiling is this little concept I created that I literally, it's a clumsy way for me to represent how hot a mech gets from overheating during an Alpha Strike. while also representing a bigger number on the radio chart as being better. A mech with 0 points of overheating value will score 10.0. A mech that overheats by 15 points will score a 5 because the chart has 30 on the heat scale on the average chart. I know there's an expanded chart, but we're just using the average. Everybody uses it chart, so it's a 30. This means that for every 1 point of overheating is going to be about 0.3 points or minus 3%. So, yeah, you get an inverted scale. My example here is the MAD 3M overheats by only 5 points when running and alpha striking. So 5 times 0.03 is 1.5 taken from a max of 10, resulting in an ASOC of 8.5. So it's a pretty good one. It's might be a bit confusing, but again, like with all the things on my charts, bigger numbers, better numbers. We want a mech that's got bigger numbers. So let's start with the Marauder 1R. Now, this is not the typical Marauder everybody's presented with. The most average 3025 era Marauder is the 3R. But that's actually the third Marauder going chronologically. This one is the Star League era original Marauder. It still carried the 2 PPCs, AC5, and medium lasers. But it had ferrofibrous armor, and it also, I do believe, has case, making it somewhat better. And overall, it's got a score of 32.63, which is not bad. If you'll notice around there, it has actually got a pretty good amount of damage you can output, which would be 35 points at the best. So it's not bad overall. It's a pretty baseline good look at this mech. Moving on, we get to the Marauder 2R. The Marauder 2R upgrades the 1R's PPCs to ER PPCs, adds in double heat sinks. Oh, and it also adds the case, so the other one must not have had case. I made a note of this. It's a much improved mech. This is the Royal variant. So it's the best one of the early era Marauders. This is the one used by the SLDF and all that other jazzola. So this one's a really good variant. Unfortunately, time and blowing up planets and production facilities and losing memory and then having the whole SLDF defect and so forth and so on resulted in the Marauder 3R. The significant downgrade of the 1R, losing ferrofibrous armor and losing armor coverage overall. So, boo, everybody went dumb and got downgraded. So we're going to be looking at a lot of downgrades now. The Marauder 3D drops the 3R's AC5 for 4 extra single heat sinks and a large laser, which, oh my goodness, that is not a big fan of that. I mean, it runs really hot. But you essentially just turn off one of the PPCs is what you do. You fire your large, your mediums, and your PPC. One PPC is generally how you handle it. And nothing explodes, which is a benefit of it. So honestly, not a terrible Marauder overall. The Marauder 3M is, in my opinion, even better because it removes the PPCs and replaces them with large lasers. This does mean it doesn't do long-range fighting anymore, having the majority of its weapons fire at 15 Texas or less, but still pretty cool. Then we come to the Marauder 3L. This is the Liao one that goes quirky by replacing one PPC with a large laser and adding 2 single heat sinks, which if you read the fluff on this one is kind of hilarious because it has gremlins that affect how it shoots, is what they say, which is pretty funny. Overall, though, it doesn't look like a bad one. It's got some pretty good values out there. Again, the long-range value is pretty low at a 3, so it's not much of a sniper for this one. It can do 15 points at long range if both the PPC and the AC5 hit, but still, it's not much of a sniper. Then we come to the truly goofball one. Produced in 3046, this one is a terrible Marauder. I mean, it is utterly garbage. It is just so hot running, and it's just so... Even if you use the quirk, which gives it a combat computer, it still doesn't make this mech really all that usable in the battlefield. I realize that I'm blocking, in my video, the overall numbers of the mechs, so you can't see them, which is kind of dumb of me. So let me just disappear. I'm gone for now. Goodbye. So I've been looking at the total numbers, which are in the orange box in the lower corner. So sorry about that. On the first view, you didn't get to see those numbers, but the numbers will appear at the end of the video. That was dumb of me, but whatever. Anyways, I'm going to continue on. So this experimental Marauder replaces everything on the basic Marauders with 2 binary laser cannons, prototype double heat sinks, Indosteel, and 2 SRM-6 launchers. Honestly, if it wasn't for the SRM-6 launchers, this thing would be a walking garbage can beyond all belief. So, yeah, it's just not great. Really not great. Now we come to the Marauder 5D. Production year of 3047. This one is starting to get a bit better. It really can't handle its heat, mainly because it has ERPPCs, it has medium pulse lasers, and it swaps a large pulse in place of the AC5. So once again, like the other D variant, Davian variant, it adds a lot of lasers. It also has a Streak SRM2, which is just rip the Streak SRM2 out, add a bit more armor on. Well, actually, this thing was nearly armored maximum. Rip the Streak SRM2 out, add in some double heat sinks, and put in a small laser for the half a ton that's hanging around or whatever. I honestly don't care. It's just an excessive thing that can go explode on you, and you could add some more heat coverage, which this thing desperately needs, because it has ERPPCs, and industry ERPPCs are bad. I mean, just bad in my opinion. But let's move on to the Marauder C. Yes, the clans have their own Marauder also, largely just taking any other Marauder corps, stripping out some of the parts, and putting in clan tech, without doing a lot of other modification, like not even adding in double heat sinks. So, what a mess. The clan tech upgrade of the 3R. This swaps in clan large pulse lasers for PPCs. Now that's a solid upgrade. It adds an Ultra Autocannon 5 for the basic AC5. It retains the inner-sphere medium lasers and single heat sinks. Now even the clans respect how good the inner-sphere medium laser is, so they just leave them on this thing. So that's actually a positive for it. It does mean, though, that it is a touch hot running, but it's not bad overall. But it's really just a straight across the board swap out of a few things. So that's what you got. It's not bad, though, for a little clanner, like, half-assed design. Now the Marauder 5M. This one is a pretty good Marauder. This one upgrades to an XL engine, so it's a bit more fragile. It swaps in large pulse lasers for the PPCs. Again, that's an odd one because inner sphere large pulses really don't have a good range, but they weigh the same as the PPC. They're more accurate, even though they are a lower range. So it's an interesting one. This is a very strange variant, in my opinion, because it really goes all in on the pulses also. I'd have retained the basic mediums, which would pair up better with the large pulses for overall damage capacity, and added like more double heat sinks, seriously. Although this thing is nearly the most heat efficient one we've this is the most heat efficient one we've seen so far, so it's not bad. The benefit also is on this one it has the LB-10X replacing the AC5, so it's got cluster or solid rounds, very good cannon, and it gives the mech essentially its only punch it beyond 10 hexes. That's where this thing really falls down, is this is a brawler variant. Though it does brawl well enough. It does brawl well enough, but it's a brawler variant. The Marauder 5S. This one may be one of the more popular ones overall, especially the Clan Invasion time period, because it's a solid punch, thanks to the Gauss rifle being swapped in for the old Autocannon 5. This one does the PPC to ERPPC, medium pulses for mediums, upgrading to an XL engine, double heatsinks, no jumpiness, but still a very solid sniper because all of its main cannons have a pretty solid range. So it's this one's a very well-rounded Marauder. It's still a bit light in the armor at only 79.7%, or the way I'm showing my thing, it's 7.97, which is 79.7%. So it is definitely lacking some armor coverage, probably meaning it has light armor on the legs, like a lot of Marauders. Next up, we have the Marauder 5CS. This one's got an XL engine, ERPPCs, medium pulses, and LB-10X. I mean, it's really similar to the M variant earlier. This is Comstar creation for the Battletech. It's got the LB-10, which is solid, but instead of having large pulses, it's got the ERPPCs, so it has a better range bracketing for the distance damage, although they do generate ungodly amounts of heat. Still, overall, a very solid mech, a pretty well-rounded Marauder. Very improved armor also, going from the average of 79% to 90% armor coverage now. So very protected for Marauder. Makes that XL engine a little bit less fragile. Then we've got the Marauder 5D DC. This is the 5D version. Removing the SRM2 and a double heatsink, which means it worsens the heat even more on the 5D, to slap in a command console. Yeah, it's a command mech. Well, okay, Marauders are already command mechs if you're using the quirk system. Marauders have the command mech quirk, which is a really good quirk. You can add a command console to add even more command ability, having a backup pilot, a guy that can be commanding the battlefield while you're fighting, but you really kneecap this mech by doing this. Although it does have really solid armor at 97%, so very well armored, but still I'm not a big fan of it because while it has a very high maximum expected damage, really you're not going to be firing anywhere near that, just because you go up so far in heat if you overheat this thing. You go up like 20 points of heat nearly. It's bonkers if you alpha strike. Just crazy. Now we come to the Marauder 5L. The 5L is the Liao variant. And this is getting near this is in the Civil War era, so we've moved beyond now. We're in 3067. And the 5L, as a base variant, is not bad looking at all. 97% armor coverage, pretty solid damage around the whole thing, not very heat efficient, but it has an issue. It has stealth armor. It has TSM. But the problem is the weapon loadout on this thing is not conducive to being able to easily maintain a good TSM level heat with the stealth armor active. I mean, this thing is just so hot running. To try to maintain that 9 points of heat, you're really handicapping yourself on a lot of stuff. It's really bad. We'll see that in the next slide. But this thing got an ECM, which you need for the stealth armor, triple strength mimer. It has ER large lasers in the arms, and ER medium lasers as well, and an ER PPC in place of the autocannon. 18 double heat sinks. This thing is just hot running even without the stealth armor active. But when you turn on the stealth armor, say goodbye to your combat effectiveness. It is... I don't understand. Stealth armor always looks really cool in design concept, but almost no mech so few mechs with stealth armor are actually good at running stealth armor. They don't just stick in 5 extra heat sinks to say, hey, let me cover this giant amount of heat I'm loading onto my systems. They're like, no, just turn it on and turn off half your guns. Well, why not sacrifice one of those guns and give me 5 heat sinks? There you go. Okay, Marauder 5R. This is the first of the Jihad era Marauders, which you can tell by the artwork. That's from Project Phoenix art book. So, hooray! This one is an upgrade of the 3R again, with an XL engine, double heat sinks, ER PPCs replacing the PPCs. It retains the basic medium lasers, but instead of an AC-5, it carries the most glorious gun in the game of a rotary autocannon 5. There is a downside though, because like every single Marauder, with a rack 5, it only carries 2 tons of ammo or 40 shots. This is just bonkers. And again, when I did the max expected damage, the way I calculated the damage was as if you fired 6 shots and you rolled a 7, I do believe. I think that's how I did my math. I'm not going to do the math in my head right now. But I do believe that's how you get the math, which does give it a very high max expected damage. Actually, the damage on this thing is really good except for the long range, because it's only got the 2 ER PPCs at long range. The mediums and the rack 5 are shorter range, and that's where most of the damage is coming from on this thing, is the 15 hexes or less guns. But it does have 97% armor coverage, making it very solid and very protected. It's also a 44.70, and that's really close to the top end of Marauders. Oh, and I forgot, it has a C3 slave. That is a good element also. That means it can get the nice range brackets, or provide the range brackets to its C3 command lance or company mates. Marauder 5T. Just by the image you can tell it's going to be another rack 5 one. It is going to have XL engine, Indo steel, large pulse laser replacing the PPCs, medium pulse laser replacing the mediums, and a rack 5 replacing the AC-5. Now, this does mean that if you look at the chart, it has no long-range guns. Literally, its furthest weapon fires at 15 hexes. Most of its guns fire at 10 or less. So this is a mech that really has no ability to snipe or engage at long range at all. This is literally all about being up close and personal. But it does have a 10 on the max expected damage if it alpha strikes. This thing is a brutal mech that's just lacking in the fact that it literally, unlike almost every other Marauder variant, it can't do any damage at long range. It's all about getting up and close and personal, and it does a darn good job being up and close and personal. Because of that, it has a targeting computer. Yes, a rotary autocannon 5 and all pulse lasers tied into a targeting computer makes this thing a truly terrifying brawler. And again, the targeting computer was just something I couldn't add in to my numerical estimates. It's a significant improvement on the combat performance of this mech, but I don't know how to represent that with. I didn't know how to represent that with a radial chart, so I just didn't. It honestly does mean that like the max expected damage, you'll be getting a lot closer to that number with that targeting computer. The Marauder 7D. XL engine, ER large lasers replacing the PPCs, so it's got increased range. It has ER mediums and a rack 5, so we're looking at some pretty good range for the medium and short range brackets right now. And another targeting computer, but this one adds in some ECM for some additional defensive means, which is always kind of nice. This is honestly another very good Marauder variant that's going to be relatively near the top. It's very nice. Now we have the Marauder 9M. This one is an utterly bizarre Marauder. It doesn't have your normal loadout. It's more based upon the experimental 4X than anything else. This thing has an XL engine, ferrofibrous armor, tag, and an ECM. It also has 4 ER large lasers and 2 Streak SRM 6X. You can see how it's based on the 4X. The 4X had 2 binary laser cannons on each arm, which in this case they just split out to 4 ER larges, and instead of having 2 6-racks, it has 2 Streak 6-racks. This mech is very bonkers. It breaks my chart in maximum expected damage, but at the same time, if you're alpha striking, you're probably shutting down next turn. The Marauder 9M2. This is the 9M, which we just saw, with a change. The funny thing is the artwork really doesn't change for it, but what happens is it rips out the paired ER large lasers in each arm in place of a heavy PPC, which is the same weight across the board. 2 ER larges weighs like 1 heavy PPC. So the heavy PPC does 1 damage less than both ER larges hitting, but it also generates 9 heat less, which is why you'll notice that this thing's ASOC, or Alpha Strike Overheat ceiling, is way higher than the 9Ms. This is a much better Marauder than the 9M. 9M2 is a significant improvement. I mean, look at that score in the corner. 47.9. That's high. I can give you a spoiler. Our highest Marauder barely crests 50. So this thing is way up there in quality. This is a darn good Marauder because of how heat efficient it is and how much damage you can output at all range brackets. I mean, those 2 heavy ERPPC, or heavy PPCs, not heavy ERPPCs, heavy PPCs just do a punch. They weigh more than a clan ERPPC and have less range, but they're the inner sphere equivalent damage output of a clan ERPPC. The Marauder 9S. This one's got a weird looking chart. It has a light engine, so we've actually gotten a better engine now. It's a less fragile engine. It has Indosteel and an ERPPC and ER medium laser per arm. It has an LB-10X, ECM, and a big galactic probe, and stupidly a flamer. This thing has a flamer and a big galactic probe, both of which, as far as I am concerned, do not belong on a Marauder of any variety. That is several tons that could have been spent on heat sinks or more armor or something, because seriously, the flamer is not useful. I do believe I did all my calculations. Even at a max heat effective damage short range, the flamer never once got used because using it is just a drawback. So the flamer was never calculated except for anything in the max expected damage because you're never going to fire it unless you're fighting infantry. It's not a good design. The big galactic probe was just, this is not a scout mech. This is not a scout mech. Sure, big galactic probes have other uses, If you're using increased rules, they can remove a hex of trees if you're using the optional rules for Big Galactic Probes. But in general, a Marauder doesn't need that. It needs its lance mates or its company mates to be providing the Big Galactic Probe if you need the electronics. The Marauder itself doesn't need to be carrying a Big Galactic Probe. The Marauder is not an assault. The Marauder is a combat machine, not much of anything else. The 6L. This one is a modification of the 5L. It takes the ER large lasers in each arm and replaces them with plasma rifles. That's good. It takes the stupid torso-mounted ER PPC and replaces it to a standard PPC. It still retains the stealth armor, the ECM, and the TSM, and it has a few less heat sinks than the 5L because the plasma rifles with ammo weigh more than ER large lasers. But so if you're firing it without turning your stealth armor on, it actually looks like a darn solid mech, with the benefit of those plasma rifles doing heat to your opponent. The problem is, just like the 5L, when you turn the 6L stealth armor on, your combat effectiveness gets wiped out. Stealth armor is useful to have on while you're moving up to engage. But as soon as you start engaging, drop the stealth armor and go to combat mode. It's just such a drag on the mech otherwise. And especially maintaining that with TSM. And also, honestly, I know Liao's weird and they love their TSM ever since Davian screwed them over with it. But the fact of the matter is, TSM is great for melee-oriented mechs, but something like a Marauder, which at best is chicken kicking, isn't the best mech to have TSM on anyways. Just run more heat efficiency and you're fine. But Liao loves their TSM, so it goes all over the place. And like I've been saying, the stealth armor is just a massive strain on mech's systems. The Marauder 9W. This is the Word of Blake Marauder. Its speed is reduced through 3.5, but it gets 5 for the jumping because it has improved jump jets. It runs a light engine, which is good. It has C3I, the Word of Blake specialized C3 system, and a heavy-duty gyro. Maybe it takes 3 gyro hits to knock out the gyro, which is kind of cool, but at the same time kind of weird. It has an ER large and a medium pulse in each arm, and a snub-nosed PPC. Not the most heat efficient, but it's kind of cool mech anyways. And it has a C3I, which does really give it a good combat connection to its level 2 mates. The Marauder 7M. This one is a derivation of the 5M, has an XL engine, 4 jump jets, replacing the pulse lasers in the arms. This is both the pulse lasers, the large and the medium pulses, with heavy PPCs. Now, in doing that, it still wasn't enough tonnage, so it has to downgrade the LB-10X to an LB-5X. It doesn't have a lot of guns on this variant, but the guns it does have can really pump out the damage. I think it actually might retain ER mediums also. I think I forgot to write that on there. Not 100% certain on that. The Marauder 9W2. This is the non-Wabi version of the 9W. It drops the C3I, gains ECM and a C3 slave, and other than that, it's the exact same mech. 355, snub nose, and all the other stuff, because that's what it is. It literally just is the, oh hey, Word of Blake is gone, let's build this mech anyways. The Marauder 7S. A straight upgrade over the classic 3R. XL engine, double heatsinks, gas off for the AC, ER PPCs for PPCs, and medium X pulse lasers for mediums. Medium X pulse lasers have the same range as a basic medium, improving them over the inner sphere pulse lasers, which are also pretty bad as well. I mean, seriously, they can only fire to 6 hexes, and they weigh twice as much as a medium laser, do 1 point of damage more. They're not very good weapons. In fact, they only actually are hit better at 3 hexes than a medium laser hits, and a medium laser hits 3 hexes further out. So, yeah, not really a big fan of medium pulses. Medium X pulses, I do appreciate a lot more. The Marauder 2T. This is the Tarian upgrade of the 2R. The LB5 replaces the AC5. ER mediums replace mediums, and it has ER PPCs. I mean, you look at the 2R, and you just swap out weapons across the board, and there you go. You got your Tarian variant. The Marauder 7C. This one has a This one is a side grade of the 7S. It runs a C3 Slave, and because of that, it reduces the Gauss rifle to a light Gauss rifle, and it adds an ECM. I would have been happier if the light Gauss rifle, if the Gauss rifle had gone away, period, and then gone with an LB-10X over that. Because light Gauss rifles are just not good guns, in my opinion. I've said that before. I'll say that again. I'll say that a lot of times. But it's a side grade, and you do have the C3 Slave, so it is going to be nice that, you know, you'll at least able to get some good range, hopefully, for the light Gauss and the ERPPCs. So that's nice. And the ECM will also script opponents' C3 Slave or C3 equipment if they're running it. The Marauder 7R. This is an exact copy of the 7C minus the C3 Slave and adding an extra ton of light Gauss ammo. So it's even worse than the 7C because it loses the Slave system to carry more ammo for the bad gun. I mean, sure, go ahead, make your Marauder even worse. I mean, this thing is barely better than some of the Marauders found in the era of the Star League, and it's been 400 years of improvements, and it doesn't do much better than like the original Marauder. That's just kind of sad. The 9D. This is a Dark Ages mixed text variant. This one has Indo-Composite internal structure, an XL engine, and XL gyro. It has a radical heatsink system, which does mean that if you're using Solaris Skunkworks to get your record sheets, it is not reporting heat correctly. Solaris Skunkworks does not handle the radical heatsink system as it is now under, if you have the Total Warfare Alternate Eras, or the Interstellar Operations Alternate Era book, the modern one. That one, the radical heatsink systems that Solaris Skunkworks represents is not how radical heatsinks work. This thing also has a Silver Bullet Gauss rifle, 2 Clan ER large lasers, and 3 medium X pulse lasers. Very combat, very nasty mech with that radical heatsink system, which is kind of cool because when you turn the radical heatsink system on, this mech is insane. It is 100% heat efficient for the turns you are running the radical heatsink system. So what does a radical heatsink system do? Let me cover that real quick. The radical heatsink system is all about giving you better heat management. Whenever you pop the heat system, essentially it works exactly like mask. You roll 2d6 and you see whether or not critical breaks on it. You run the mask chart, 3, 5, 7, 10, 11. Rolling lower than those numbers means your system breaks. So don't use it too often. You know, turn the radical heatsink system on every other turn. You activate the heat phase. Every heatsink dissipates 1 additional heat. So if you're running singles, they'll act like doubles. If you're running doubles, they'll act like triples. So this thing goes stupidly heat effective every other turn, essentially, if you're wanting to reel that. Now, if you do break your radical heatsink system, either via taking a critical hit shot from someone else, or failing your mask roll, or your radical heatsink roll, it will generate an extra point of heat when you move, and an extra point of heat if you fire any weapons. Not for every weapon, but just if you fire guns, it will generate an extra point of heat. So it essentially bleeds a bit of heat into your system if it's broken, and of course you can't activate it anymore. So it is only a small burden in heat if you actually get it broken. It's amazingly cool system. It's like 3 critical spaces and 4 tons for this significant every other turn heat boosting. You'll find other mechs like the Lament and a few things like that will have these things. They are fantastic. And it's one of those late Republic era or like the experimental tech kind of like systems or super advanced tech systems that I really like and I like to see more of because, my goodness, it is literally makes a mech every other turn really, really effective. I mean, this thing cannot overheat when the turns it pops the RHS and it doesn't break. It is so cool because of that. Now we have the Marauder 11D. The Marauder 11D also breaks our max expected damage chart. It has the XL engine and XL gyro. It has Indo-Composite and mixed tech. It runs 2 Clan ERPPCs, 2 medium X pulse lasers, and another Silver Bullet Gauss rifle. I'm not sure why they like the Silver Bullet Gauss so much. I mean, other than the fact that you're essentially just, it's like an LB-15X, I guess. It's weird with better ranges. And there you go. That is all of the Marauders, except for the uniques. I didn't actually include any of the uniques because they're one-offs. I did include the experimental one because I wanted to talk about the experimental one when we got to the weird Merrick variant from the later eras. So I kind of needed to have that one in there. And I'm sad that the Omni Marauder from Extro Caveat Emptor is actually not more than a unique mech. Because in all truth, while Caveat Emptor is a hilarious XTRO, it really is funny. If you haven't seen that one, you should read that one. It's quite a good laugh. The Omni Marauder is actually the good mech in that TRO that you really wish was actually just an official mech. Because it's actually really good. The Omni Marauder, I would have loved to have thrown on these charts because it's so good. And now, we're going to go through how did all the variants of the Marauder stack up. There are 30 rankings on here because some mechs did end up being on the same combat or the same by the numbers value. So, I'm back and let's go through these numbers over here. Number 30, the Experimental 4X. I mean, honestly, were you expecting anything different? It is a giant load of garbage in so many ways. Then we have the 5L when it has Stealth Armor active. The 3R, that's your 3025 era classic Marauder, is almost the very bottom of the charts because it's just not good. It really isn't. It's too hot running and just, yeah, not good. Then we have the 6L, also with its Stealth Armor on. Like I said, Stealth Armor is a massive burden on a mech's systems unless you're just willing to sacrifice so much stuff to make it active. You use it when you're engaging at range and you kind of plink a single laser or whatever, maybe an autocannon with it. Well, they don't have the autocannons, they have the stupid ERPPCs and PPCs, so of course you can't even take advantage of low heat generating weapons. And it's just, it's bad. Stealth Armor is got its uses and its places, but I don't think it's a Marauder. Then we have the 1R. The very first Marauder comes in at rank 26. Then we have the 3D, the 3M, the 3L, all the other 30-25 era variants kind of appearing in quick succession right there. Because they're all roughly in the same combat range. They're pretty close to each other. Then we get the Clan one. And the Clan one is honestly not a very high ranked Marauder. You think, oh, Clan Tech, that's great. Not when you not got support with the heat sinks, and not when you don't have support with like other systems. When you're just running Clan Tech, slapped into an Intersphere 3025 mech, it's not very good. Then you have the stupid Command Cockpit one, which rips out stuff in order to slap in a Command Cockpit that honestly a Marauder doesn't need. Then we have the Word of Blake, the Word of Blake ripoff, and the 7R, all coming in at rank 20. We have the 9S in rank 19, the 5D, the 5L, and the 7C all in the same spot. So there's where the Stealth Armor 5L goes when the armor's off. 12 places higher up. Then we have the 2T, our Brawler mech, the 9M, the 2R. So, hey, look at that. The Royal is all the way in spot 14. The second variant of the Marauder is that high up the chart. That is pretty darn good. The 6L, so the Plasma Rifle, Liao one, when it doesn't have Stealth Armor on, is 14 spaces better. The 7M, the 7S, the 5M, the 5T. Oh, that's the real Brawler one, isn't it? Yeah, that's the real Brawler one. The other 2T is the Towerian variant, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, this is the 5T. The 5T is way up there. It's a good Brawler. The 9D, very good mech. The 7D, the 5R, the 5CS, the 5S, the 9M2. So that's the 7M's, or that's the 9M's non-ER large laser carrying better brother. The 11D, and then, which is a nice 50-pointer, and the very first spot, the 9D when it's running radical heat sinks. So every other turn, it's the best Marauder you can ever have. If you'll know again, just to illustrate the point, the 5L drops 12 slots by running an overheating system. The 6L drops 14 slots with an overheating system. And the 9D improves 7 spaces by having a heat improving system. Yes, my chart is biased towards heat efficiency because honestly, a lot like looking at acceleration in a car, I think that heat efficiency in a mech is essentially a measure of a mech's overall combat efficiency. If you can do everything every turn you want to, then you're more efficient. And unfortunately with a Marauder, we really don't have a Marauder design in the general that's designed with a long-range bracket of guns and a short-range bracket of guns. In so many Marauders, these short-range guns are afterthoughts. The medium lasers are not really the concentration of a Marauder. It's all about your range guns. And unfortunately, a lot of Marauders can't even handle the heat of their ranged guns. Even the basic 3R has 2 PPCs and an AC-5. But it can't handle even the heat from those 3 guns every turn, which means it's inefficient. And that's just a burden on the mech. You can fire, you go bang, bang, and then you have to cool next turn. And you're already going to be slower if you're doing that. So essentially a Marauder 3R goes 2 PPCs and an AC-5, and next turn, PPC AC-5. 2 PPCs AC-5, PPC AC-5, unless you want to be slow. And if you really get screwy, and you decide you want to, have less shooting ability, you can go even worse. But that's just not how I want to run mechs. And of course, these lists are always on how I want to run mechs. So let me move over to the side so you can see the total numbers right there. And back. Actually, let me just disappear for a second. It'll be easier if you see it that way. There we go. Now you can see everything on here. That's where the mechs rank in at. And it's a pretty good spread, though. I mean, honestly, that does show that from the 4X to the 9D, or just the 11D even, the mech gets almost twice as good. Now, if you take it from the 3R, it is an 80% improvement in the mech overall across the course of all those years. The 3R to the 11D is an 80% improvement in the quality of the Marauder. Of course, yes, these other variants are more fragile at times with the XL engines, but the other variants are fragile also because they lacked case. So if you nicked the ammo, they still exploded and were gone. So Marauders are in general to have some fragility to them, no matter what variants. They're either uncased or they have XLs. That's kind of how things go. Some of them do run lights, and some of them even have heavy-duty gyros, which is kind of silly but funny and cool. So there you go. That's the Marauders. The Marauders through the years. And we've come to the end of the video. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please do the typical YouTube things. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. And, yeah, I've been SleeplessRonin. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a new type of video. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you think I did a good job. If you want me to see me do this for other mechs. Or what mech you'd like to see me do this for next. It needs to be a mech with a good number of variants. So, unfortunately, the Falconer can't be an option because it has 2 variants in all of existence. Sad little mech. Sad, sad little mech. But things like the Crusader, the classic 3025s are something I can very easily tackle. A lot of them will have dozens of variants throughout the ages, which means there's a lot to talk about and a lot of charting I can compare. Tell me if you have an idea for how to incorporate things like the fragility of XL engines, the benefits of having C3 slave and target computers. I mean, it's easy to represent the ability of double heat sinks, and Endosteel and ferrofibers are represented by higher combat value, but some things, some of the intangibles like target computers, were really hard to kind of think of an idea of how to incorporate them other than just talking about them on the screen. So if you have an idea for that, let me know and I'll see if I can incorporate it. And yeah, that's kind of what we're going to do in this video. If you liked it, typical YouTube thing, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. I've been SleeplessRonin. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you next time. Sayonara.